And then I said, what's all the pudding for?
That's hilarious. You're a pretty funny guy.
Oh, I have my moments.
Hey, that's my beer.
Well, actually, you see, it belongs to me.
What do you mean?
You see, you and I are the same person, Case. You're just a figment of my imagination that slithered out from my drunken mind. You have no place in this world, but yet every part of you is part of me. And so if you have something, then that means I have something, whatever it is I take from it. Every day I drink the blood of lamb from Bandy's tract. You see, let's look at it this way. If you have a milkshake IPA, then I have a milkshake IPA. Because I have a straw. Right? There's my straw. And my straw reaches across the room and starts to drink your milkshake. I drink your milkshake. I drink it up.
Don't bully me, Tars.
Yes, that's fair. That was a little rude of me.
Really?
Yes, don't worry about it.
You sure you're not gonna drag me to a nearby bowling alley or something?
Now, why would I want to do a thing like that? It's not like this is a parody of There Will Be Blood. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the ASMR review show. For this video, we are doing another film director series where we talk about every movie from a famous film director. And the topic of today's video is the director Paul Thomas Anderson. Not to be confused with Paul W.S. Anderson. No. This guy has been nominated for a lot more awards than the other one. Though no disrespect to Event Horizon. That's a great movie. So, Paul Thomas Anderson, definitely a more newer director. Started off in the 90s and then still going strong today. His most recent film just came out at the end of 2021, and then it's got more of a wide release now in 2022. And he's kind of an enigmatic director because, when I first started watching his movies, I kind of felt he was like a modern Stanley Kubrick, which is funny because his first few films would have been before Stanley Kubrick died. But then he's also got some stuff that feels very like Martin Scorsese, but then some stuff that feels like Tarantino, and then definitely some Terry Gilliam, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas weirdness inspiration, but then also I feel like vibes like Robert Altman with the big cast and the Coen brothers and their kind of sort of dry wit. There's a lot of influences in his work, and I think he's combined that all into his own style. But his movies can be quite a lot more weirder than some people give them credit for. So, definitely one of the best directors working today, and he's got a cool style and a lot of great movies to talk about. And for today's video, well, the thing that spurred this off was I found this Milkshake IPA from the Wild Eye Brewing. And it's an IPA. And I like to think that I'm mostly a straight white guy, so therefore I like IPAs. Because IPAs for white guys is basically pumpkin spice lattes for basic girls, right? That's how it is, and there's nothing wrong with that, Yeah, it's, well, I guess it's without the milk. It's actually, like, no lactose. Oh. Yeah, vegan friendly. Well, so my whole thing to get a milkshake IPA to talk about milkshake because, you know the meme. has kind of been thwarted by the fact that I got a Milkshake IPA that's not actually a Milkshake IPA. Well, this is awkward. Anyway, so yeah, we're going to talk about all of Paul Thomas Anderson's movies, and I'll tell you what I think about them. And I'll try to avoid spoilers for them, but, you know, if I have to go into it, I will. So let's basically say that, you know, I'm recommending all of these films, right? He's a great director, and I enjoy all these films. So if you haven't seen any of these and they seem interesting, I would recommend them. So, you know, I'm not going to try to spoil them, but in some cases I might, if that makes sense. Anyway, let's start at the beginning. Paul Thomas Anderson's first film is called Hard 8, but I think the original title for it was supposed to be Sidney, and it's also kind of a redo of a short film he made called Coffee and Cigarettes, or Cigarettes and Coffee. The two things that are definitely perfect for panic attacks if you're trying to figure out who Pepe Silva is. So Hard 8 is a pretty good movie. I think I'm not in love with it as many other Paul Thomas Anderson fans are, because I know there's some people that if they were to rank his movies, there's a few that they'd put at the very bottom, and then Hard 8 would be just above there. But for me, it is at the bottom, because there's a couple of his not as talked about movies that I actually quite enjoy. It's kind of a crime story, kind of a bit of a thrill to it, a bit of a drama, but basically the main plot is that there's this older gentleman, this enigmatic character named Sidney, and he randomly shows up at this coffee shop to help out this person he's just met, played by John C. Reilly, and he brings him to Las Vegas and shows him tips on how to game the system and sort of work his way up, you know, not getting rich, but like getting just enough to get by. It's a well-written movie, and it's well shot, and it's well directed, and there's great acting in it. There's also parts by Samuel L. Jackson and Gwyneth Paltrow, and a very small cameo by Philip Seymour Hoffman. So there's a lot of great stuff to it. It's just more like, I don't find it as much of a movie that sticks in my memory and collective consciousness as some of the later films that we're going to talk about. But I know it does have its fans. Like, I remember Cinefix, when they talked about great debut films from 90s directors, they put Hard 8 as their favorite one over some of the other classics, like Reservoir Dogs or Clerks. But I think my favorite, when it comes to first films by a director in the 90s, is probably Pi by Darren Aronofsky. It's another director I need to do a video series on. But, you know, don't let that discourage you. Hard 8 is a good movie. I think it just takes a while to get going, and then what it builds to is really cool. It's got a pretty satisfying turnaround in the finale, but then it just kind of wraps up and then it's over. You know, so it's good. Don't let this make you think that I dislike it. It's just that there were more places to go, and, you know, we only go up from here, which we definitely do for a lot of these films. Because the next one we jump to is quite a leap, for me at least, and that's Boogie Nights. Boogie Nights, well, how do I talk about this movie without demonetizing the video? Boogie Nights is about the film industry, the, shall we say, more mature film industry, you know, for that one thing that has that one website with that drum thing, you know, however it goes. you know, it's the adult film industry, you know, Prawn. So it's about the rise and fall and comeback of these characters working in that area of film in the late 70s, early 80s. And it's got good old Marky Mark Wahlberg, and Julianne Moore, and a big comeback role for Burt Reynolds, who it was funny because he wanted to star in the movie, and then when he kind of realized what it was going to be, regretted it. But I think it got him an Oscar nomination. So it's like, it was the comeback movie for him, but he regrets it. I'm also realizing now I should have done a Burt Reynolds shot for this video. It's one of my favorite shots. It's Captain Morgan and Butter Ripple Schnapps. So yeah, a huge cast in this movie. And right from the opening shot, this movie is showing you like you're in the hands of a skilled director and you're in for a ride, because it opens with a very lengthy and complex and technical tracking shot, starting off from focusing on a billboard sign called Boogie Nights to establish that this is the movie. You can't change the title of it. And then it goes down from there and follows the group of people around in a building and through a dance floor, and it just establishes all the characters and their relations. Such a great shot, great moment. And then there's just lots of cinematography like that throughout the film. I think this one, the cinematographer was Robert Elswit, something like that. And he's worked as cinematographer for most of Paul Thomas Anderson's movies, and I think he doesn't get enough credit as a cinematographer, because I'm always looking at these films and how beautiful they're shot, and I'm like, oh, is this Roger Deakins? Is it Emmanuel Lubezki? Who is it? And then there's this Robert Elswit guy. I'm like, I don't recognize that name at all. So, great cinematography, great acting, great story. Definitely not a film you want to watch with your parents, although I have watched it with my dad, because we're chill when it comes to watching movies like that. And, you know, if you're in for lots of the graphicness, then there's plenty of that. And, yeah, but it also makes it, like, remarkably relatable. It's easy to get into and follow and enjoy the characters and the story. And yeah. But also it's a movie that gets quite real and quite intense. Like, the first half is a lot of fun and games and setting everything up. And then right around the middle of the movie, there's a New Year's Eve party as they're welcoming in the 80s. And there's a scene at this New Year's Eve party that's another long shot, and it involves a pretty intense moment, and it's kind of one where you watch it and you're like, oh yeah, that's oh fudge, man, you know. And it slaps to a hard cut to a title card, 1980s. And it really is like a thing that we're going to talk about in some of Paul Thomas Anderson's other films. But he really leans into that whole, like, you know, the 70s was the death of the 60s counterculture movement and the love and peace and the hippies, because the 60s ended with still Vietnam War and the Manson murders of Sharon Tate and everybody. And so it was this idealistic summer of love movement that just crashed in on itself and then got lost. And so there was a lot of that doom and gloom in the 70s, hence why we had bands like Black Sabbath. Because in the 60s it was a time of peace. And then Black Sabbath said, screw that, we're done being happy. And doom metal was born. And then the 70s then got even more depressed with, like, you know, the idea of, like, the Star Wars, you know, then Nixon, Reagan era, all that leading in, and there was just more of this depression going in. So then the 80s gave us even more heavy metal. And that's just how it is. It's just been one big doom and gloom ride for the last several decades. And now we've got the 20s. And oh man, what a fun decade it's been. But we're getting distracted here. The point is that hard cut to the 80s really leads in, because then now we got everyone's doing way too many drugs and people are fighting, and it's just really intense. And then there's like a sequence with 3 different stories going on, and all of them have really intense moments to it. The limousine, the truck, and the donut store. Those moments are crazy. And then just when you think the movie is run out of crazy intense moments, there's the powder keg scene, the cocaine scene. Man, what an intense scene. Again, basically, without spoiling anything, it's a couple of characters are trying to scam a guy out of money by selling him a fake stash of cocaine. And the dealer is, or the drug guy, he's played by Alfred Molina, who most people will know as Doc Ock in the Spider-Man movies. And he's great in the movie, and the whole time he's like listening to great classic rock songs. I guess they'd be not so classic at the time, they'd be newer. And then it just like one more layer keeps getting added on and onto that scene to make it even more intense. Like, first they've got a gun, then the other guy's got a gun, then there's a shotgun, then there's a guy lighting off firecrackers, and then there's some guy who's gonna test it, and oh man, such a great intense finale to the movie. And what a great last shot in the movie. What a great way to end it, you know. If you know, you know. If you know, you know. So yeah, Boogie Nights is definitely a great movie. Really good encapsulation of the 70s and 80s, but also through an interesting lens of an industry that has, you know, shall we say, quite a interesting reputation to it. The whole controversy around that type of stuff, you know. Yeah, it is a fun one though, but again, it can get pretty crazy in that last half, you know. It's not just a drama, a rise and fall story where it ends with just people yelling at each other or signing papers in big offices like they normally do in these rise and fall dramas. Oh no, there's a lot more to it than that. Next, that leads us into the third Paul Thomas Anderson film, 1999's Magnolia. This film I hated when I first watched it, but that was because I watched it, I think, when I was at an age where I wasn't yet ready to appreciate the filmmaking, and I definitely went in thinking it was something different than what it actually was. You know, in my mind, I thought this movie was something different. And so then when it wasn't that, I was upset. So it took me a couple more attempts to get into it. And I know for some people, this is like their all-time favorite Paul Thomas Anderson movie. And for some people, it's even like their legit favorite movie. Like Mike Portnoy of Dream Theater. I know this is one of his favorite movies because there's a scene, a speech in this movie that is sampled in the Dream Theater song Honor Thy Father, which is another reason I watched this movie, because I was a big fan of Dream Theater. So the plot to it is there's all these characters, and they're all somehow seemingly connected in various ways. Like, this person has a father, and their father is the host of a game show, and the person who owns the game show, they're sick, and their wife is going off to run errands, and while they do that, they have a nurse, a caretaker, and he's trying to call a person's son who runs this one event, which is being watched on TV and ads by this father and a kid who are on the game show. But then there's also this guy who won the game show a while back, and he works at a like electronics store or something, and he wants braces. And so there's all these connections to it, right? And you know, I do really like this film now, but I'm still not fully in love with it. It's a bit too overlong and pretentious for me. And I think Paul Thomas Anderson himself, he was very proud of it when it came out, but now he looks back saying, maybe I went too far in a few places. And while the filmmaking is great, there's great acting and stuff, it's a bit of a hard movie to watch. Not because it's overly depressing or violent or anything like that, but basically, you're watching an over 3-hour movie where it's not really going to have a satisfying ending for a lot of the characters in the movie. And I feel that for it being over 3 hours, that maybe they could have taken a little more time to wrap up some of the storylines. Like, everyone knows, who's seen the movie knows the big ending sequence, right? Where it's a ending of, shall we say, biblical proportions. And, like, there's a character you see during the big event, and something happens to them, and then during the proper epilogue, we never find out what happened. And it's, you know, I understand that that is kind of the unfortunate reality of life, is that not everybody gets happy endings, and some conflicts are left unresolved. And not everything fixes itself automatically overnight. And that is a key point in this movie. So that's probably why it's a hard watch, because I know that some characters are going to have the closure they need, and not everyone is. And so it's kind of like, you know, why would I subject myself to this for 3 hours? And also, is it intentional? I haven't watched this movie with subtitles, but is it intentional that at the end of the film, the character making a bit of a speech is like inaudible, and all we hear is the pop song playing? Maybe it was kind of like a intentional thing to blur it, but you know, people give Tenet crap for inaudible dialogue. This movie has a bit of that too at the end. Yeah, no, don't get me wrong. That's all. It's a minor complaint, and I guess a bit of a warning. You know, you're going in. This ain't no Lord of the Rings, where you get a big 3-hour movie and a big satisfying ending, and it just makes you feel like, yes, well done. Or not even a Godfather ending, where it ends in kind of like a sort of way. And not like an ending like Heat, where it's just a damn, great movie. Yeah, Heat, man, yeah. It just kind of ends with, wow, that was a nice ending. But what about those two people? What happened to them? And that one guy, we last saw him in the house. What happened to him? You know, so again, you know, as they say, we may be through with the past, but the past ain't through with us, right? So, a bit of an odd way for me to talk about this movie, but I guess it's important to clarify that I really love the filmmaking on display here. All of that is incredibly well done, but conclusion-wise, you know, that's a big thing, the ending, right? Like, everybody loved Game of Thrones until it ended. Everybody loved Lost until it ended, right? If you sink the ending poorly, then it ruins the rest of the experience for you. And I'm not saying I hate the ending of Magnolia, just for me, it's why I can't. I really like it, but I can't love it. Exactly. But we'll say, Tom Cruise playing like a men's rights activist before the internet got a hold of that idea and stuff, you know? Hilarious. Like, so despicable. Everyone knows Tom Cruise as being the funny, despicable guy in Tropic Thunder, but gotta give him a lot of credit for his funny, despicable role in this movie. So, yeah. Don't get me wrong, Magnolia is great. Let's move on before I just reiterate that same statement, shall we? The next film, it's funny because it's like Magnolia was at the end of the 90s, everyone was worried about Y2K, and it ends with an ending of biblical proportions. It's 3 hours long. And then his next movie, he just quietly opens the 2000s with a barely 90-minute surreal comedy starring Adam Sandler. And that's Punch Drunk Love. This one, I think, is underrated. I think it's great. You know, this one I probably enjoy more than Magnolia, probably because it's a lot more easy to digest, and it's so surreal, shall we say. Like, this movie would not be nearly as great if it didn't have Adam Sandler in it, which is such a crazy thing to say, but like, I guess everyone recognizes him as a legit great actor because of Uncut Gems. I still have not seen that movie yet. Apparently it's pretty crazy, pretty intense, and it's from my favorite company that makes boring movies, A24, so obviously that's an important thing. We have to consider the distributor of the film, not just the film itself these days. Okay, sure. Yeah, so Punch Drunk Love. It's Adam Sandler. He plays like a plunger salesman. He's got this weird little back warehouse business. And he gets accidentally wrapped up in like this credit card scam. And also he like really has the hots for this woman who's kind of into him. Yeah, it's so weird and hilarious. Like, some of the images in this film, I like how the shots just kind of linger on something for you to see how strange it is. Like Adam Sandler like running down a parking lot carrying a large harmonium, or him picking up a large like display case of pudding and just running through the dollar store with this big long tracking shot, or like him running full tilt while his shadow is displayed at an odd angle. Like, so many great images and shots in it that's just so comical. And man, this movie is so funny. Like, so many characters will like, they'll say a line, and then a couple moments later in the conversation, they'll just randomly repeat the same line, and they'll just keep saying it and hammering it in. Or then a character will walk into a room and say a line, and then another character later on will walk into a room and say another line. Like, everyone's always pointing out the pudding, right? They walk in, "Hey Barry, how's it going? What's the pudding for? Anyway, so I was just in town, what's the pudding for?" And then another character will walk in, "Oh hey, it's good to see you again. Wait, what's the pudding for?" And then on the way out the door, they'd be like, "Okay, well, it's nice to see you. What's the pudding for?" And they just keep doing that for some reason. I don't know why. It's so funny. And then, like, it's not the most appropriate of insults, you know, because it's definitely a homophobic thing, but, like, you know, he has 7 sisters. Adam Sandler's character, Barry, he has 7 sisters, and they're constantly talking about how they used to tease him for being what they joked that he was gay. And so they just are constantly saying that, like, remember, we used to call you that. Anyway, how you doing? Then another one walks in. Hey, we were just talking about how we used to call you that. Remember how we used to call you that? You'd get so mad. And we used to call you that, right? And they just keep going on and on about it. It's like, you know, they're like, did you get the point yet? No. Yeah, it's hilarious. But also it's real strange. Like, there's this a weird transition sequence between scenes where it'll like cut to like weird, like flashy, glowy lights. Like all of a sudden it's turning into a Gaspar Noé film. And it's like the moment where a typical movie would show like the title and the opening credits. It like plays like upbeat music, but it doesn't. It just shows the weird lights. And then it does that in a transition between scenes, and I'm like, what's that all about? That's odd. And then Emily Watson is in the movie, and she's such a weirdo in all the greatest ways. Like, it's just like these two are so cute together. And Adam Sandler, he like perfectly embodies like my internal conversation, like on a date, like he says goodbye to her, and he doesn't kiss her goodbye. He's just like, and bye bye, and then he walks off, and as he's walking away, like, and bye bye. You stupid person! I can't believe you said that. That's me. I relate to that on a very personal level. But there's still also some randomly intense moments. And Philip Seymour Hoffman has a minor role. He's great. I mean, it's got a scene where Philip Hoffman is just yelling, you know, to shut up. You know, just, man, shut up. Shut the fuck up. Just shut up. Shut up. So that automatically makes it an amazing movie. Yeah. I don't know. It's short, it's sweet, it's simple, it's strange, interesting. It's an oddball movie. And there's the fun theory that it's secretly a Superman movie, because Barry, he always wears blue. The main person he's interested is like red. When she hugs him behind, it forms the Superman cape. He's able to demonstrate random acts of superior strength, especially when his love interest is in danger. And also, whenever he flies on a plane, he doesn't take any luggage. It's like he's traveling like Superman, you know? He doesn't take anything, he just goes as is. And this would be the best Superman movie ever if it wasn't for the real best Superman movie, which is not Man of Steel, it's The Iron Giant. That's the correct answer. So now we definitely get into the most strangest era of Paul Thomas Anderson, because now he managed to knock out like 4 films in pretty quick succession, right? Like Hard 8 was like 95, 96, Boogie Nights in 97, Magnolia in 99, Punch Drunk Love in 2002. But then it's another 5 years before he does another film. But it's worth the wait, because the film he makes is There Will Be Blood, which is the film that got me into Paul Thomas Anderson. And it could be in my top 10 favorite films of all time. I mean, I did a video on my top 5 films, but as to what is 6 to 10, well, that's a lot trickier of a thing to figure out. But if I was putting together a list of contenders for that top 10, There Will Be Blood would be on there, because it is that good, and I do love it that much. So There Will Be Blood is like, it's a common thing to say, like, this is like the most Stanley Kubrick looking movie Kubrick didn't make, and everyone compares this to, oh, it's a wide shot of a hallway with symmetry. It's just like Stanley Kubrick. But let's be real, it's pretty accurate in this movie, like some of the shots in it, the way it looks. Like, I don't know, I'd like to think Kubrick would have been proud of this movie. So yeah, it's the story of the rise of this oil tycoon guy in the early 1900s. Daniel Plainview, played to perfection by the great Daniel Day-Lewis, right? With that perfect accent, you know. I'm Daniel Plainview, you know. I do my own drilling. This here's my son, H.W. That perfect voice. Bit of a bloodthirsty curl. Yes, Eli, of course. that voice, that accent. So, he's on the hunt to find a place to set up oil rigs and stuff, you know, because capitalism. And while trying to establish a new oil derrick in an area, he comes sort of into conflict with this very religious fanatic preacher played by Paul Dano in one of the many roles where we see someone get to beat him up. So obviously a great movie. I can't wait to see the Batman, and hopefully Robert Pattinson gets to punch up Paul Dano some more. So that's hopefully going to be good. I mean, also as a, you know, shall we say, let's see how I say this. As a high school student growing up in a very religious community, and someone who is not into that whole Christian, Catholic, Judaism, religion, all that stuff, you know, this movie was very cathartic for me, shall we say. You know, to see someone of such high and mightiness on themselves and so prideful in themselves and their faith, to see them get taken down a notch, shall we say, to see them strike out, you know. So I definitely like that element to it. But also it's slow and boring, and there's very little dialogue in sequences, and lots of pretty shots of landscape, so that's like everything I like in a movie. There's like no dialogue for the first 14 minutes, so again, gives me 2001: A Space Odyssey vibes in that way, that it was showing rather than telling, and using film as the visual medium of sorts. So that's all great. So many great sequences in the film. The oil fire sequence, where it looks like they're literally descending to hell. And the Johnny Greenwood score. He's the guitar player from Radiohead. Fantastic score. And I love the way he does scores for films. This and the next one we'll talk about, they sound so oddball and unconventional, and not necessarily what you'd think of a typical movie score. All those weird little percussive bits he has in that scene, and I know some of it was taken from previous work, but you know, it works in here, so that's great. And yeah, just seeing this guy slowly descend into crazed madness, and that final sequence, you know, it's thing that everyone's memed, you know, hence my choice of drink. I drink your milkshake. I drink it up. Yeah, it's a meme. It's a hilarious line, but it's also great. There's so many hilarious moments in this movie. It's almost like a dark comedy. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I love this movie so much, but also it's kind of interesting how this movie makes you think Paul Thomas Anderson's directing style is going to be one way, and then he can just throw you something completely oddball out of nowhere, something completely different, right? But yet it still all feels like it's by the same person. So, yeah, this movie's great. I know there was the big contest of the big three Western, Southern, Southwest period piece drama type movies in 2007. This, The Assassination of Jesse James by the Coward Robert Ford, and No Country for Old Men. No Country for Old Men was the one that won all the awards that year. I prefer There Will Be Blood to No Country for Old Men, and Assassination of Jesse James is also really great, but I have not watched that one nearly as much as the other two. I think I need to rewatch that one. It's been quite a while since I've seen it, and I mean, you know, the Roger Deakins cinematography, the train sequence, right? Great looking movie. So, yeah, There Will Be Blood's great. Easily one of my all-time favorite movies, and my personal favorite Paul Thomas Anderson movie. Now then, again, another weird thing, we go another 5 years without a Paul Thomas Anderson movie, so he only makes 3 in 10 years, after making like 3 in like 3 years. Pretty crazy jump. So in 2012, we get The Master. So this movie, this was the first time where I was like a fan of Paul Thomas Anderson before one of his movies had come out. So I was like, you know, the movie was going to come out, and I was hyped for it, like watching the trailers and stuff. And I was really hyped because I was feeling like, oh, you know, I liked that whole, you know, takedown of fundamentalism and religion in There Will Be Blood. You know, I'm a false prophet's God is a superstition and all that. And then seeing that this movie was going to be kind of like a big screw you to Scientology, and that Tom Cruise got annoyed when he watched it, and Philip Seymour Hoffman is like an L. Ron Hubbard character, and I was like, oh yeah, this movie's gonna be like this Joaquin Phoenix guy and his weird half lip sort of thing. He's gonna like get into the cult, and then he's gonna leave, and he's gonna like violently take this guy down, and it's gonna like totally be smearing these fundamentalists. And yeah, this movie's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be wonderful. And then I went and saw the movie, and I remember very vividly that the second the credits started rolling, there was a guy in front of me, and he stood up very quickly and yelled, "What a waste of money," and then went storming out of the theater. And I sort of sat there like, I'm not sure what to think. And over the years, I'm still kind of a little uncertain on this movie. Like, it's amazingly shot. It's so much great acting. There's so many great moments to it, but yet also some of it feels so dry and like cold. Like, funny enough, I think he went even more Stanley Kubrick in this movie in that regard. And so it's another one where it's like, it's so good, but I just can't fully love it, you know? But if anyone does love this movie, that's great. I respect you for that. I mean, all those shots of Joaquin Phoenix driving a motorcycle through the flats, any bit where Philip Seymour Hoffman gets to go on crazy, insane rants about past lives and anything. You know, that scene where Joaquin Phoenix just totally tears up his jail cell. So many great moments. But yeah, I guess it was definitely a case of me, like Magnolia, making the mistake of trying to will the film in my mind into existence rather than accept the film for what it was. Especially with the ending scene. I remember like being on the edge of my seat thinking the ending to this movie was going to be like the end to There Will Be Blood. And it's kind of the antithesis to it in a way. There Will Be Blood was very angry and confrontational, whereas The Master is a lot more passive and more of a, let things be and, learn to let live sort of thing. Maybe that's why I don't like it as much. I was hoping there would be blood in this one too. But again, don't let that distract. This movie's great. It's just quite a slow one and quite a stale one, Everything's very cold and distant. But also you get a scene where Joaquin Phoenix does his best impression of that. To the window, to the wall, to the wall. To that song, So that's funny, I guess. And it was cool to see a film really try to touch on that whole post-war delusionment. I like how in Paul Thomas Anderson movies he's kind of touched on, the word isn't really neglected elements of history, but shall we say, the ones that have received less attention. People talk about the 70s and 80s, and Paul Thomas Anderson's like, no, I'm going to focus on the adult industry. And talk about the 40s and the 50s, and he's like, I'm not going to talk about the Great War or the nuclear family. I'm going to talk about the PTSD the veterans suffered and how that affected all their delusionment of the world at that time. Or, in later films we'll get to, the 60s and 70s. I'm not going to talk about peace and love and hippies and rock and roll. I'm going to talk about delusionment of the end of the hippie counterculture and the loss of innocence with the Manson family murders and the oil crisis in the 70s. Right? So I think that's cool how his films focus on that. Again, don't let this seem like I dislike any of these movies. They're all great and well filmed, and it's cool that you can look at people's lists of ranking Paul Thomas Anderson films, and they can be drastically different on what gets the top slot. It's more of a personal thing, where these films like Magnolia and The Master are more mid-tier ones for me, because they're all great made films, but I don't love them on a personal connection, shall we say. So then, another Paul Thomas Anderson surprise. You're thinking, oh, is it going to be another 5 years until we get one? And then he's like, no, barely 2 years later he comes out with Inherent Vice, which is an adaptation of a novel by Thomas Pynchon, who I know is a very odd writer. I have never read any of his books, but I've had a friend who was really into his books, and he described them a lot to me, and there was some very odd things, shall we say. So there was a lot of anticipation in how this story was going to get adapted into the big screen. And I remember the first time I saw Inherent Vice, I didn't know what to think, and that's actually kind of been the fun trend of Paul Thomas Anderson movies lately. I go in hyped, I'm ready to do this. This is going to be awesome. And then afterwards I'm like, did I like it? Did I love it? It was well filmed. I'm not sure. Guess I'll have to watch it again. And I think Inherent Vice was definitely the movie... Oh no, it's not the one I've tried the hardest to love, because that was Magnolia. I don't know. I watched this in theaters, and I didn't know what to think. It was very odd. And I think it wasn't really until I watched it in 2021 preparing to make this video that the movie really clicked for me. And so personally, I love Inherent Vice. This movie's great. It is the ultimate combination of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas and The Big Lebowski. And if you can't see it, I'm a fan of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Oh, there, now you can kind of see it in the shot. Yeah, I like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas a lot. It's one of my favorite movies. And The Big Lebowski is great. But both of those films had a strange sense of humor and surrealism, and I didn't really get them right away. And that's the case with Inherent Vice. I definitely didn't get this movie right away. But then, all of a sudden, it all clicked for me, and the movie finally made sense. I watched it while I was high. What? It's legal in Canada. No, officer, I mean, I would never partake in that sort of thing. Yeah, that's my advice for Inherent Vice. Advice for Inherent Vice. Advice for Inherent Vice. The lovely turn of phrase. Yeah, if this movie was too oddball for you, my 2 recommendations. 1, turn on subtitles. This movie has a lot of names, and a lot of times they're talking about the names of characters like 20 minutes before they actually show up on screen. And so then also when you meet said characters, you are not necessarily told that that person is said character they were referring to earlier. You have to have remembered. And I know it's not a bad thing to say, oh, you really gotta pay attention during a movie. But that is definitely a thing for this movie. So I found when I watched it with subtitles, which I like watching movies with subtitles, that it helped me identify the characters better, because there's so many names in this movie, or a lot of times you might not catch a character's name. You just are like, oh hey, it's that actor, and there's some person, and then later on you're supposed to have memorized that person's name, because they'll be discussing, by the way, we just found out that that person is dead. We did not show the death scene on screen. Instead, we're just showing more scenes of 2 people talking while it's shot in shot, reverse shot, or a long shot with a slow pull in. And that's all you're going to get. So that's my first recommendation. And then my second recommendation is, you know what? If you like to partake in the enjoyment of certain substances, then, you know, enjoy yourself a little. Shall we say, I think that definitely helps in the enjoyment of this film. You know, and I'm pretty sure there was a screening for it where they, like, specifically handed out blunts to people to smoke while watching the movie, like, and then you see the poster for it, and it's like all these groovy colors, man. Like, yeah, they knew what they were doing. They knew. So yeah, Inherent Vice is the one that most people put at the bottom of Paul Thomas Anderson's lists, and I, as of lately, would strongly disagree. I think it's a very well-written movie with so many bits of funny and clever humor, so many oddball bits, and man, Joaquin Phoenix as Doc Sportillo, is it? Oh, so great. He just walks around with the sunglasses and that hat, and he's trying to act like all cool detective. There's a bit, which it's in the trailer, and it's the bit that I probably quote the most, and it's the scene where he's shooting at a person, and afterwards he yells out like, "I hit you." I don't know, something about the idea of like being in a shootout with someone, a life or death scenario, and you yell out and ask the person you're shooting at, like, did I get you? Did I win? Something about that is just so hilarious. It's just stuck in my mind. So I get why for some people the movie is a little too obtuse and uninteresting. But for me, under the right circumstances, thank you, Canada, I had a lot of enjoyment with this movie, but it did take some time to get into it, so, I understand why it's not everyone's cup of tea. And there I go, saying I enjoyed Inherent Vice more than The Master. A real edgelord we got here. But, the movie also has some really interesting themes to it. Again, it's focusing on a thing I've touched upon in this video already. The disillusionment and demystifying of the realm of innocence of the 60s and the cold, hard reality of the depressing 70s, We tried our best for peace and love in the 60s, but in the end, the neo-Nazis still prevailed, and maybe this is a message that we need to talk a little bit more about, that the Nazis are bad people, and you shouldn't try to be like them, especially in the current year. Sorry, I got a little distracted there. Where was I? Oh yeah, disillusionment of the 70s. Yeah. So, no matter what we did, it's still like, bad things were happening, bad people were still in society, and all these people started taking over and corporatizing and industrializing things, and yeah, hence heavy metal was born, because people were sad. So yeah, I like that it really touches upon that theme. Also, Josh Brolin in this movie. Some of his scenes, man. Dude's a comedic genius. And Benicio del Toro is great in this movie. Owen Wilson's great. Like, oh man, so many little tiny moments, Owen Wilson mouthing. Or that one guy leading him through the place and him just quoting all the lines like, yeah, get that. Or the Josh Brolin eating the joint and just grabbing the plate of weed. I'm like, would that do anything for you? When Doc's watching TV and he sees an ad of Bigfoot, and then it's like all of a sudden the ad walks up and talks to him like, "What's up, Doc?" And his reaction, it's just like his reaction is just like it's just such a subtle thing, not like a big right, not a, just sort of it's perfectly understated. Anyway, I could gush about so many other small moments in this film, but let's move on, shall we? The next Paul Thomas Anderson movie is Phantom Thread. And this is another one that I watched and I didn't know what to think and if I liked it. And then I came back to it a bit later and rewatched it. I was like, yeah, this film's great. It wasn't one that I was out rushing to see, though, because it didn't seem like it would interest me. The big selling point was that it was Daniel Day-Lewis's final performance. And it was a big period piece drama with costumes, and he designs fashion. Okay. Sure. Not really selling me yet. But it's actually great. It's actually great, The first time I watched it, thought it was good, and then some bits stayed in my mind, and then going back to it, I was like, wow, this is actually a lot more brilliant than I remember. I was kind of, not, shall we say, dreading watching this one again to film the video, but I wasn't, thinking like, oh yay, I get to rewatch Phantom Thread. But this movie's actually pretty great. It's actually pretty great, Daniel Day-Lewis is great, but we have to give a shout out to, oh, I don't remember her name. Is it Vicky Krieps? She's from Luxembourg, I think. She plays the main love interest, other protagonist in this movie, the sort of character foil to Daniel Day-Lewis's character, who is hilariously named Reynolds Woodcock. She's great too. Like, I mean, you've got to hold your own acting-wise against Daniel freaking Day-Lewis, man. That's not easy, man. But she does, man. And this movie has lots of delicious food in it. That's also good. There's so many great meals, but everything about them is, like, significant to the story. Like, every meal means something. The intricacies of food is very important. Like, the scraping of butter or jam on toast, or whether a meal has been cooked in butter or oil. Yeah, there's a lot of intricacies to it. And, like, perhaps it might be a bit slow and strange of a film, but man, the ending that it builds to is so, shall we say, again, weird, oddball, surreal, out there, strange, different. A very Paul Thomas Anderson thing to have, that it definitely makes the journey worth it. So Phantom Thread is not a personal favorite Paul Thomas Anderson film of mine, but I think it does prove that even a film that many might enjoy, that is not something I fully love. I can still remember, like, yeah, even this one has still got great moments to it. And, I mean, it was nowhere near my favorite film of 2017, but it was cool it got nominated for stuff. I'd like to see Paul Thomas Anderson get his Oscar. He's probably not going to get that for a bit still, though. And also 2017 was such a stacked year for movies. Like, in Best Picture category alone, you had Shape of Water, Dunkirk, Get Out, Lady Bird, Phantom Thread, and then that's not even including, like, Blade Runner 2049, or... No, I'm blanking on 2017 movies. Thor Ragnarok. I don't know. 2017 was a very good year for film. So many great ones. But yeah, so Phantom Thread's great. Even if it's one I don't love, it's still great. And finally, that brings us to the most recently released Paul Thomas Anderson movie, Licorice Pizza, which was on my top 10 list of favorite movies of 2021. I think I had it at number 9. Number 9. Somewhere around there. It made the list. And yeah, this one's also great. Paul Thomas Anderson goes back to doing a big 70s movie, and it's a coming-of-age story. And the main actor is Cooper Hoffman, who is Philip Seymour Hoffman's son. And Philip Seymour Hoffman worked with a lot of Paul Thomas Anderson movies, and so it was very tragic when he passed away. And so now his son is taking up the mantle in this great role. And then, who's the main girl? Elena Haim. And, like, she's part of a band, and all of her family is in the movie. Yeah, and it's got a great soundtrack, and it's so well shot. But like Inherent Vice, it doesn't shy away from that 70s disillusionment, demystifying of the 60s hippie movement. This one kind of mainly focuses on the oil crisis, and, you know, cars not having gas because supply chain issues. Something that is definitely a lot of a big hot topic today in Canada, shall we say? So yeah, a bit of a real world thing on that, or the idea of, like, people trying to make a change in politics, but realizing they're all just more tools to be used for various ways. So it definitely follows up along all of that. I think the big thing that was a bit of a hurdle for some people watching this movie was some of the jokes and some of the offensive parts. I mean, as a white guy, who doesn't get offended over everything, because I'm totally privileged and all, like, I can say, oh, none of it was offensive to me. But that's easy for me to say, I'm not Japanese or anything like that, or I'm not Jewish, right? So it's easy for me to say that, but as to what other people thought, well, that's for them to feel. My personal thought was that the movie was kind of showing us, specifically the scene everyone talks about is this guy doing a really horrible, over-the-top, stereotypical Japanese voice, and then not even knowing Japanese or talking to a person who doesn't understand English, and he doesn't understand Japanese. I think the thing I got out of it was that this was showing the idea that these business people were trying to be more inclusive and wholesome, and yes, we welcome people of all backgrounds and all races and all religions. All are welcome here. They're actually not really that inclusive. It's all a bunch of virtue signaling, and it's really just about the corporate profits to try to appeal to what's cool and hip or what's the status quo. I feel that was the point being made. But, that's just what I got out of it. But yeah, a lot of great moments. And also there's a bit in the middle where Bradley Cooper shows up playing John Peters, who's a real-life person, who I think was the one who directed A Star is Born, the 70s version of it. And his girlfriend is Barbra Streisand. No, Sand. Barbra Streisand. Barbra Streisand. Sand like the waves. Barbra Streisand. Buddy. I don't know why that conversation's so hilarious to me. He shows up, and the movie almost gets randomly intense as the cocaine scene from Boogie Nights. I remember being in the theater watching this movie being like, oh my god, it's the cocaine scene from Boogie Nights all over again. So, I think this one is another worthy addition to PTA's filmography. And that's kind of where we're at, A lot of great films under this director's belt, and I know that a lot of people have varying opinions on what they like the most of these movies. So if you made it this far, please let me know what your favorite Paul Thomas Anderson movie is and how you would rank them. Again, my personal favorite is There Will Be Blood, and that's a very tough choice for me to rank the rest of them all. I'd put maybe Phantom Thread and Hard 8 towards the bottom, and then in the middle, well, I've got between Boogie Nights, Magnolia, Punch Drunk Love, The Master, and Inherent Vice, and Licorice Pizza, and those are all great movies in their own way, so I don't know, man, it's a tough call for me to make, so why don't you guys let me know? Ah, yes, I drink that milkshake. Anyway, we'll see what director I can come up with next to do movie reviews on. I have, at the time of filming this, filmed one for Christopher Nolan. I just have to edit it, because I've got a fun idea planned for the editing for that review. And yeah, we'll see where we go next here. But, hopefully you guys liked some of these movies and went out and watched them. And with that, hope you all enjoyed that, and I'll catch you next time. Have a good night. And I'm finished. Cue the classical music,